Man, this is Deion Dawkins, man, and you're listening to The Scoop on OurScoop.com. You already know.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to The Scoop, OurScoop.com podcast, Season 9, Episode 40. I'm John DiCarlo. Not a full house today, not even close. It's just Declan Landis and I. Declan, do you think that Johnny and Kyle and Ramirez secretly hate our guts?
I mean, it's hard not to think that.
Yeah.
I certainly don't think it's out of the question.
They say they have commitments, but I don't know. I'm more of a show me rather than tell me type of person, and I don't
Exactly.
I think they hate
are
us.
the commitments in the room with us? That's what I'm asking.
I think they hate us.
Until we prove otherwise, I don't think it's off the table.
Well, fortunately enough, we still have a packed show for you guys. You'll hear my full interview with Lou Parisi, the president of the new Al Elite Fund, for-profit NIL collective. You'll hear part of Jacob Smedley's interview with Temple Athletic Director Arthur Johnson from Tuesday night's Temple Takeover at the 1912 Club in Plymouth meeting between Jacob Smedley and Jake Gable, two recent Temple grads, and done some stuff for us with Al Scoop, and they were at the Temple Takeover event. We're recording this on Wednesday, so they were there last night. Jacob got Arthur Johnson. They got to talk one-on-one with Stan Drayton, with Adam Fisher, with Diane Richardson. So a lot of good content coming your way. Again, we're playing a clip of that conversation with Arthur Johnson. The full conversation will be available to OurScoop.com subscribers as we're recording this right now. There's a story up on the site right now with some excerpts of that conversation. We got a basketball scheduling update, some football staff updates, a little bit of a lighter mailbag, and of course, some more Temple food talk. When we get into the Summertime Madness bracket, which is again underway, the battle for the best food on Temple's campus, I have been pushing and advocating for the place that used to exist on Broad Street that served both Chinese food and donuts. And a friend of mine, a former Temple colleague of mine, Brian Foley, had chimed in on Facebook when I posted this on my Facebook about the Summertime Madness bracket. And I wanted to give Brian a shout out here. He said, John, I was pondering your question about the Chinese food / donut place. I took a deep dive into the internet and confirmed it was called General Express and Boston Donut. And he's right. So I want it out there. I want people from the 90s to know and remember that place, because I think if they know it and remember it, I don't know, might get some traction.
We might just have to have a discussion about it later.
Are they still in it? They're still in it, right?
I guess you'll have to find out.
Yeah, I'll have to find out. That's a classic.
Stay tuned.
Classic podcast tease there, Declan. That was
got to give the people what they want.
That was terrific work. That was good stuff. So yeah, so we'll have a lot of fun on this episode, along with bringing you a lot of good information. The Scoop is brought to you by Greenspan and Greenspan Injury Lawyers. If you've been injured on the road or the highway and the crash was someone else's fault, the insurance company will not be on your side. You need us, Temple Law grads, who will fight hard to get the compensation that you deserve. We only get paid if we win. So in Pennsylvania or New York, call us today at 215-261-7359. It's 215-261-7359. And you can find them on the web at greenspans-law.com. That's greenspans-law.com. Before we go any further, I really want to pay tribute to the late father of a good friend of ours, Mike Mudrick. Mike was our assistant editor at Al Scoop before we brought Kyle on. Well, we brought Kyle on. Mike and I actually interviewed Kyle as an intern, a young Kyle Gauss. And Mike Mudrick was my assistant editor at Al Scoop for several years before he pursued his master's degree and then his PhD up at UConn. And he's now a professor, sports communications professor at York College, has published a textbook and is doing some awesome work. His father, Tom Mudrick, recently passed away from cancer, and it hits hard, obviously, for their family. Mr. Mudrick was 71. He had moved out to York with his wife to be out closer to Mike and Hannah and their two sons, and one of the kindest and most awesome human beings you could ever hope to meet. He reminded me a lot of my father. Some of the fondest memories I have of him were when Temple was in the Atlantic 10 and they were playing in the A10 tournament in Atlantic City. You know, Mike would tell his dad, and I would tell his dad, yeah, we're going out there to cover the tournament. And he would say, well, I can get you guys comped rooms at a hotel there, because Mr. Mudrick would take his mother, Mike's grandmother, who was also an incredible, incredible woman and so sweet. It was like a tradition where they would just go to the casinos and just hang out, play the slots, and spend some time together. And they had comped rooms, and we said, "No, Mr. Mudrick, we'll make our own reservations. We get reimbursed for it." And he's like, "No, I insist." He would make the trip out to AC and took care of us and spent time with us, and he was just awesome. And I will continue to say it: cancer can go F itself. It's a cruel and awful disease, and I know that probably just about all of you, unfortunately, who are listening, your families and circle of friends have been affected by it. But just want to send my love out to Mike, to his brother Kevin, to Mrs. Mudrick, to Mike's wife Hannah, who's incredible, and their sons Brendan and Colin. They're just an incredible family, and went to the funeral on Monday and got to spend some time with them. And our buddy John Lamb, who also was covering Temple sports and has done some stuff with us at Owl Scoop in the past, one of our good friends. And so just wanted to send them our love and let them know that we're thinking of them. Mr. Mudrick was just kind of just part of, through Mike, part of the Owl Scoop family, and we love him, miss him, and just can't say enough wonderful, wonderful things about him. So Mike, we love you, buddy, and looking forward to seeing you and the family this summer. Declan, famous number 40s, and then we'll get into on or around this date. We don't have Kyle to quiz us in the 40s. Any 40s that jump to mind?
Yeah, there's a couple for sure off the top of my head. Harrison Barnes comes to mind. Probably the most famous 40, Gale Sayers.
You took mine.
Sorry, my fault.
I make it sound like an obscure one. Like, oh, I was only thinking of that one.
Wow, I can't believe you thought of that.
Yeah.
And then Nicholas Batum as well.
Yeah.
Those are the three that I have, though.
That's good. That's good. We'll wait for Kyle to come back next week to quiz us.
You're not even going to give one?
Well, I was going to go with Gale Sayers.
Yeah. That's like the one old football player number I know.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is the worst week for it to be the two of us because, you could have easily filled in there any other week.
We're just being genuine. We gave you three. We're not rambling on. We're good. What about? I did want to tell you guys that I did have Chelsea listen back to the part of the podcast last week where I said this is my gift to her for our anniversary, and then had her listen to Rymir saying, "If I were her, I'd be pretty pissed off." She got a kick out of that, and
very few gifts better than an Owl Scoop podcast dedicated to you. I'm just throwing that out there.
We had to move some stuff last week, and we're both working a little bit, so we're not really like properly celebrating our anniversary yet until this coming weekend. But yeah, she got
two episodes.
Yeah, we'll dedicate this one to her as well. So,
that's a lot of pressure, but we'll try.
Just keep piling on the gifts that keep on giving.
There you go. It's special. It only happens once a year.
Oh yeah. What about on or around this date for, I guess, what would be June 6th, right?
It would be June 6th. Thank you so much for asking. We'll start with birthdays. I only have one that I vaguely recognize, and that was on this day in 1967. This famous actor was born, known for his part in The Holdovers, which I believe won a ton of awards, or at least was up for a ton of awards, and apparently The Truman Show, which I had no idea until I watched it back.
Jim Carrey?
No. Do you know The Holdovers? Do you know?
Yeah.
I was going to say Big Fat Liar, but Jim Carrey's also in that, is he not? Oh, no, that's Liar Liar. Billions, Planet of the Apes.
Paul Giamatti?
Paul Giamatti.
There we go.
June 6th, 1967. On this day in 1844, George Williams originated this organization in London, most famous, I would say, arguably, for a song and an interpretive dance to that song. In the 70s? Sounds right. It feels right. It fits.
Say it again. Run that by me one more time.
1844, George Williams originated this organization in London, and the organization is arguably more famous for a song named after it with a synchronized interpretive dance from the 70s. You're going to kick yourself if I say it, so I'm going to let you keep guessing.
Can you give me one more clue?
Sure. The band that made the song, very famous for dressing up in costumes that seemingly did not have any kind of correlation. They're very colorful, very vibrant costumes.
The Village People?
The Village People.
YMCA.
The YMCA. There you go.
YMCA started overseas?
Apparently.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
Real quick, are you aware, and I meant to say this, are you aware that Paul Giamatti's brother, Marcus Giamatti, teaches at Temple?
No. What does he teach?
He is an associate professor and the head of directing in
Oh,
the School of Theater, Film, and Media Arts.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I did not know that. Does
Yes.
Paul ever come visit?
I don't know. That would be awesome.
I've never seen him.
And their father, of course, is former Major League Baseball commissioner, Bart Giamatti.
I
So,
actually didn't know that either.
yeah.
Look at that.
Well, now you know.
There you go. They're
Now you
brother
know.
and son, born on this
Yes.
day,
Yes.
1967. On this day in 1934, this U.S. regulatory agency was established, shares a name with a college football conference, or a college conference, I should say.
College conference. SEC.
The Securities and Exchange Commission,
Yes.
also known as the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
We'll do a couple more here.
There we go.
Oh, I skipped probably the most famous event. That's on me. It's out of order on my list. Oh, no,
That's
I
okay.
didn't. It's actually perfectly in order. I did that on purpose.
Nobody
On
has
this
to know.
day in 1944, it's just a very famous event. It has to do with World War II and a beach in France.
D-Day.
Correct. Yes. The Normandy invasion began on this day in 1944. We'll do one more here. On this day in 2015, this horse became the first thoroughbred in more than 35 years to capture horse racing's Triple Crown with its win at the Belmont Stakes.
Oh, I should know this. And I don't know.
Crazy.
I'm only thinking of like the
Secretariat.
yeah. I was thinking of like the Philly, like the Philly horses, like Smarty Jones and stuff. Smarty Jones did not win the Triple Crown. I don't
That's
know.
correct. American Pharoah.
Ah, all right.
Yeah, some good SI stories about American Pharoah.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was on this day.
You didn't say it with your British accent again.
I don't know where the British accent comes from. There's no way I have a British accent.
Like a couple weeks ago or last week, you're like, and that was on this day. It sounded British. You sounded
I'm
like
surprised that I didn't sound British today because I have been binging Ted Lasso with my brother over the last 2 days.
Have you seen it? Have you seen it before, or were you rewatching?
No, it's my first time. We're on season 3 right now. We're coming up on the end. So
And you just started it like a couple days ago?
it started Monday. Yep.
Oh wow. So
just tore through it.
Yeah, because I get teased all the time about taking forever to get through series, which is fair criticism. I finally saw the last episode of Ted Lasso last week. So I mean I loved it. I thought it was great. I'm not breaking any news when I say this. It's awesome just for the storylines as much as anything, less about the soccer, but yeah.
It is, yeah. It's I didn't like I went in skeptical like slightly because I was like, maybe I will, maybe I won't. But I do love it. We're like halfway through season 3 right now. So
who is your favorite character? And you can't say Ted.
No, I wouldn't. I would say oh my God, Danny Rojas is up there for sure.
Yeah.
I love Danny Rojas and I love Sam Obasanya.
Yeah.
Those are probably my 2 favorite. It was I don't want to spoil it, so never mind. I was gonna say it was Nathan. You should probably cut that out though.
Why should I cut that out?
I feel like that's a plot point. Is it not?
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe. He's a jerk.
No Roy Kent?
I like Roy Kent. I do appreciate Roy Kent, but it's just like nothing brightens my day like seeing Danny Rojas get screen time.
What about the short-lived Zava?
We actually just finished the episode where he retired. That was shocking. He reminded me so much of Zlatan Ibrahimovic, so it made me laugh every time.
That's the player that he's actually based upon, right?
Oh, is he? That makes sense. Yeah, I love Zlatan, so it made me.
Yeah, that is Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Yeah, that's who.
Okay.
They based the character on him.
Nothing gets by me.
The part where he underrated part of the series is where he is talking to the guys and said, I allow my children to name themselves. And that's what my one son is named.
When they get old enough.
When they get this one son's name is Dingus Pingus or something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
And then their goalie goes by Van Dam after that, which is tough. Yeah.
Look at us talking about Ted Lasso in 2024 when everyone else saw it a couple of years ago.
What are you going to do?
Always right at the forefront.
It ended last year, didn't it? Or earlier this year?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. But,
we're not that far behind.
Delightful series. Makes you want to move to London.
No.
With money that we don't have.
If anything, I don't want to move to London because of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just did, confirmed.
Oh, I would love to. I would. I'm not saying I would want to move to London, but I would love to visit. I've not yet been there, but
Visit, okay. I was gonna
would
say
love
if you
to.
move there, I'll FaceTime you. I'm not coming.
Well, all right. Not even coming to visit?
No, okay, yeah, I would.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do an
you're
episode of
welcome.
The Scoop overseas.
That'd be fun.
But it would be fun. So I talked at the outset of the show about my conversation with Lou Parisi, who is the president, former Temple student athlete as well. He's the president of the new Al Elite Fund. It's a for-profit NIL collective that's going to be essentially working in tandem with the TUFF Fund. And it's another good step forward, NIL step forward for Temple. Lou, again, is going to be the fund's president. And Jackie Dansack is the fund's director of operations and general counsel. She's a graduate of Temple's Beasley School of Law. And so had the chance to talk to Lou about how this all came together, why he's passionate about this, how they can work in collaboration with the TUFF Fund, and why this is an important step forward for Temple. I mean, collectives right now, I think, are as important as they've ever been. Temple, like we said last week, isn't going to have the budget of a Power 5 school to be able to pay student athletes like some of those programs would, but collectives, as Andrew Hope told us last week, aren't going anywhere for now. So the work that they're doing is going to be very important. So hopefully this will be a good educational conversation for all of you. I know a lot of people had questions about how the Al Elite Fund differs from the TUFF Fund, what their mission is, what their goals are, how they can help, how it's all going to work. And so really enjoyed talking to Lou. And so hopefully you guys will learn a lot from this conversation and enjoy it. And then we'll have more for you on the other side.
All right, we're excited to be joined today on The Scoop by Lou Parisi, the president of the newly established Al Elite Fund. Lou, thanks for joining us today. How you doing?
Thanks for having me, John. Excited to be here.
No problem. Lou, tell me how this came about. Did you approach Temple with this? Did Temple approach you? How did this grow?
Yeah, it was kind of like the stars aligned. So, I've been following NIL since obviously as it's evolved, since its inception. As a former athlete, really interested in the space. And for, I would say, 10 to 12 years, I've been coming back to Temple and giving my time, mentoring, speaking to the athletics teams, and an opportunity presented itself, with a void, I think, on the B2B side, and this was really coming together at the right time personally. And I said, hey, I think there's an opportunity for myself to really lean in here, chatted with my wife and met one of my business partners through the process, and it just established itself.
Jackie's going to be the director of operations and your general counsel.
Yeah.
Temple Law School grad. How did you get connected to her?
Yeah, so I think Justin Miller and Arthur in the athletic department have always been, one, inviting me back to speak in different ways and mentor athletes and give my time. Through that connection, they just naturally said, hey, Jackie, has great pride for Temple as well. She was and tried to provide a little bit of an education when she was a Temple law student. She had some great concepts and ideas on the education side. And just naturally, Justin introduced me, and we hit it off. When you think about something as quickly evolving as NIL and
sure.
A collective and what its purpose is and its mission, and we'll talk a little bit about that. You want to find complementary skill sets, and Jackie and I have really fit together well right off the bat, and it couldn't have happened better.
I think so much of NIL is about education for the fan base, for the administration, for everybody. You talked about how quickly it's evolved. Pennsylvania was literally, I think, the first state to adopt NIL legislation. And there's the TUFF Fund. Tell listeners what the difference is between the TUFF Fund and the Al Elite Fund, and how you guys can either collaborate with them or augment what they've already done.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I've been getting asked that a ton.
Yeah.
Andy and his partners, well, really Andy at the TUFF Fund, he and I have connected, and we actually are connecting later today as well at another event. One of the ways the TUFF Fund is primarily focused has been on the donor relations side as a nonprofit collective focusing in on large donor contributions. The biggest difference is, my collective, myself and Jackie at the Owl Elite Fund, we're going to focus in on the business-to-business relationship. And you think about marketing buckets and budgets that businesses have, and now this new shiny object from a marketing ROI perspective, they can run campaigns across the name, image, and likeness of athletes. That's where our collective is going to focus. I've got 12 plus years in the business, marketing and sales industry. Jackie's got 18 plus. So together, we really feel like we can bring some great expertise into that space and really help Temple and Temple athletics.
And I know you're just getting started, but where do you see it going? Is it for recruiting? Is it for retention? Is it for both? Because it's a cliche, but it is the Wild West out there. And I'm happy to see student athletes get the money that they deserve, but it has completely turned college athletics and recruiting, retention upside down. Do you see it fitting in for recruiting, retention, a little bit of both? Like, how do you see it fitting in?
No, it's a great question. And, when I strategically put together the mission for ourselves, it is both, right? It has to be, when we have to be consistent in our mission and our play that we run every single day. And I think, from a retention perspective, we can see, and we've seen recently, what happens when, athletes or an athletics program have a really good run. Well, those athletes get an opportunity to enter a transfer portal now and then go elsewhere. Recouping dollars, for their performance. And then at that point, schools that are not equipped, or programs that don't have the collectives and the support and the programs in place, retention becomes their biggest challenge.
Yeah.
But then you think about recruitment, right? Now you can look at some of the top athletes just coming out of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And if this isn't part of that, that established base when they get here, you're just thinking about, well, why would I miss the opportunity as a top tier recruit in my sport if that's not on the future plan or future docket for myself? So it 100% has to, it will continue to be both. And we're excited about that because I think, one, we've got two Temple Owls putting our heads together, and, a lot of pride for ourselves, and our history is deep here, and, continuing to lean in and help. But education on that alone will help, because when you think about the TUFF Fund and the Owl Elite Fund, it is a together cooperative effort, right? 1 + 1 will equal 5 in the end of the day. And that's how we've agreed and continue to partner to approach this. They are two different, and sometimes they're going to have overlaps, but the reality is, our focus will be on the marketing campaigns piece and how it, can tie together directly to athletes.
For people who haven't seen the press release, I'm going to read part of your explanation of your mission. You've heard this already, but I'm going to read this aloud for people. So, to achieve its mission, the Owl Elite Fund aims to invest in resources in brand management, marketing, and promotions, develop and sponsor programs to raise proficiencies in compliance and legal and financial literacy, and spearhead community building and networking programs to create opportunities for athletes. That's great detail. I know it's early on, but take listeners through what that looks like to you and what that means.
Yeah, no, and I think a lot of this is, one, we have the opportunity to educate on, what it looks like long-term for athletes. Well, this is a real-world example of how we can help build a spirit of entrepreneurship for athletes, whether it's through the education component, informing and educating them on what the legal ramifications or potential is for them getting a deal done with or without support. And then from a monetary and business component, I mean, this is entrepreneurship 101 for a lot of these student athletes. So, when you take that to the ground level at the end of the day, it is, and it's going to be specific to brands and specific to the programs and what they want to accomplish with the athletes or the teams. The reality is that this is just a further education opportunity for student athletes. That's where we're going to focus in on, because it is the Wild Wild West, and it's continuing to evolve. It's continuing to change. What Jackie and I are going to stay true to consistency is, we've got this opportunity to be at the tip of the spear for what the precedent looks like for this. As stuff shakes out over the next 6 to 12 months to potentially even longer, it's changing every day, but we really believe in that component of education, and partnering with, the athletics department now through some of the most recent legislation. We can be a huge partner and advocate for what their athletes get to learn through these experiences.
The athletic department is a partner that you could not have had now in the past, and now you can. What is that partnership like? Again, people can look at the press release and get an idea. They can listen to this interview, get an idea. But what does that partnership look like? How do you specifically partner with Temple Athletics now? What can you do? What are you allowed to do now? Yeah,
6 months ago, we couldn't do much. It was very separation. I don't want to say church of state, but it really was that, that type of level of, potential separation between a collective, right, for-profit, nonprofit, and the athletics department. Now, with the most recent legislation, they can be an advocate. They can be a political matchmaker. They can help push opportunities through that just present themselves naturally through whether it's the athletes or the teams or just their day-to-day. So they can be an extension, right, in one way or another to identifying value. And the way that I think we can truly help partner with them more is on the education side. I've got the B2B experience I mentioned briefly, and what that looks like when you think about entrepreneurial startups and what that means for individuals, and just marketing and sales in general. And then obviously tying and putting that a bow on that. But Jackie, my partner, I think brings extremely important value to our collective from a legal side.
Sure.
You know, and she's got 18, 20 years of marketing, procurement, sales experience in brand level negotiations. And then you tie the legal component on that as a lawyer and as our counsel, you know, we can provide that level of a resource now, whether it's through an education forum for athletes and teams, you know, whether it's through a few content-driven seminars. But I think that relationship only continues to open up the doors for how collectives can lean in and be a resource for their athletes in different ways.
Well, that's super important, right? Because we've already seen that there are some athletes who got swindled into bad contracts and are now suing. And it's, we kind of all, not that I wanted to see this happen, but we kind of all saw it coming, right? There's the allure of money. People think, oh, you got a scholarship, that's enough. But there are some students in positions of great financial need, and they sign these contracts where you're like, oh, dear God. You know, but and how much does she help in that space? I know it's kind of the obvious question, but
yeah, I mean, she was really pushing for that when she was a Temple law student, right? So she was really pushing from her avenue of, you know, there's an opportunity here to provide support, whether it's pro bono as a Temple law student, get credits, you know, and she really was a big, you know, voice for that education forum. Signatures are powerful, and I think that she's really tied that into my mind a lot, and obviously I knew that coming into this, but I think that education alone of what to look for, what to be aware of, what you should think about, what you have your rights when it comes to your name, your image, and your likeness, and what you should, you know, kind of look out for and avoid, that level of simplicity Jackie can bring to students and those that want to know more about it, whether it's the coaches too now, right? And I think with the recent changes, you know, anybody can be an advocate for this and really partner with us. So she brings a tremendous amount of value to our collective, and together I think we really complement each other.
On our podcast last week, we had Andrew Hope on. He's a Philadelphia lawyer who was talking to us about what the recent NCAA settlement means. And collectives aren't going anywhere. And in a place like Temple, where it seems like as of now, they're not really internalizing NIL, what you guys in the TUFF Fund are doing becomes even more important. Have you been able to get the lay of the land to kind of realize just like how much work needs to be done and how important you guys are? Because we know at the end of the day, coaches need players, and coaching can only take you so far. If they don't get good players, Temple doesn't win. They don't bring revenue in. So what you guys are doing now, I mean, Temple's athletic budget, I'm not breaking news, they don't have the athletics budget to pay their student athletes like an Alabama would. It's a completely different league right now. But with good NIL resources around, like you guys in the TUFF Fund, you guys, I think, become even more important now in the space. Like, is that an exciting thing and a challenge, everything wrapped up in between?
Yeah, no, it's you see me smiling as you're asking it.
Yeah.
It is a challenge, and a challenge that is only going to provide great learning opportunities for us as we get this off the ground. You know, today $0 is what our collective drives, right? Just being transparent. Our goal is to get to $1 million in 12 months, right? If we can't drive that type of bucket, we're never going to be able to help a D1 city school, the real city school, compete for talent, retain talent, and provide that overall mission that we've talked about. And the TUFF Fund has done a fantastic job since they've started. You know, we're going to add a very complementary component to that, and together, you know, I truly believe in that equation I mentioned earlier. You know, we're going to be able to approach same people, same organizations potentially, but they're not. It's not an or conversation; it's an and because of the marketing components. What I will say, one of the other challenges and exciting ones that we've started to uncover as we met with Van Wagner, the new multimedia rights company, and they're completely supportive and excited to have us as another arm in their partnership as they start to drive, because NIL is new to them too. And it's continuing to evolve. And, you know, Temple's a little bit late to the game just because of the rich history and how foundationally we've been, you know, that way for other programs. But, you know, we're here. We launched at the right time. I don't think we're late to the game, and we can't drive impact over the next 12 months. But it's going to be a dedicated, you know, in the weeds effort by Jackie, myself, and partnerships with the groups I mentioned earlier.
You talked a little bit about this already, but obviously as a for-profit collective, there's of course the aspect where you'll make money off of this, but there's still the why to it. And this is, you have a full-time job with Comcast. You have a family. We were talking about that, you know, I was getting to learn a little bit more about your family and your kids, but it's work. It's a lot of work. I see how much work Andy puts into it. This is going to be a lot of work. Why did you want to do this and take this on? I know you kind of touched on that a little bit, but like there's got to be like a why to it, because not everybody has stepped up to do this. What makes you want to do this and take this on? Because it's going to be around the clock thing.
Yeah, it's a lot. You know, first thing is Temple is a big contributing factor to who I am and my personal and my professional life. I owe a ton to my experiences that I've had here, not just with the athletics department, but the university. So when I think about what I have gotten from Temple, it's been something that's paid me over the years in just those experiences alone. I met my wife here, right? We've met some of my best friends here. You know, I started my career from an introduction that I had while I was a student at Fox, right, during a lecture, and stayed in contact. You know, so I owe a lot of my start and my foundational experience. And then I look back at the athletics department and what the athletics department, and being a part of the track team, a captain my senior year, like really leaning into that experience has made me who I am professionally and personally. So first of all, for me, it was a passion project. I've always wanted to be involved with the university at a level that I can contribute. And now 12 plus years marketing sales experience, I can bring that and use that for the good of athletes as they go through this wild, wild west interaction they're having. And, you know, for me, yeah, I mean, for-profit is really the delineation for how we can target a market and show our expertise through ROI and campaigns, right? So I think when you think about the difference between the nonprofit, the for-profit,
you can reach people that Andy can't reach, right?
I can work with a business and a marketing department as they start to think about, well, how am I and are we building our brand and tapping into, whether it's a, you know, just call a fintech company, right? How are we getting in front of that 18 to 24, 25-year-old demographic, fresh through college, out of college, right? And then our fan base is another one. And then you think about the alumni, right, that have that connection back to the university. So there's an untapped, and I say shiny object for a lot of companies now when it comes to what they can do with the right partner at a university as large and successful as Temple. So, you know, for me, it was a passion project. It's going to take a ton of time and effort, and Jackie and I are committed. And we've got to find the right partners, and we've already found a few early on, because partners are going to be crucial to this. So we talked about education. You know, for me, it's that inform component through education, and then there's the partners that are crucial, and not just partners like the TUFF Fund, partners like Van Wagner, and the list goes on in that space, but partners like Innovative New Media. There are companies out there that are partnering with collectives and driving that relationship through, you know, marketing campaigns, sales type outreach, and really kind of bringing those opportunities to us to start to think of it as a marketing agency put together, pitch to the athlete or to the team, hey, there's a brand here that wants to work with you, and kind of go from end to end.
I mean, I'm sure the answer to this is probably yes, but there's an appetite out there for companies to invest in Temple athletes. But how would you sell them on it? And I know you've had a few conversations, like you said already. But what's your pitch to them as to why it should matter to them and why they'd want to work with you?
Yeah, so one, I think it starts with the brand, right? And what are they trying to accomplish from an objective perspective and growth, right? And everyone's looking at growth and how do they grow now through the now evolved digital space through COVID, right? Where you can reach people in totally different ways, and you have a consumer base that potentially may not leave their home. You know, you have hybrid work environments, you have people still returning to the office, you have companies that have gone completely remote. So I think a university at scale as Temple has a halo effect of that we can reach just through that natural connection. But when you think about the athletes and athletic programs, you know, brands are going to be tied to what they're trying to accomplish through, you know, if it's a, let's just say a female product that has a demographic they're trying to touch, they're early on in their growth cycle, or even they're more mature, you know, how do we integrate, how do we as a company start to evolve and market through the name and the image and likeness of a student athlete, you know, and some that are doing really well on their own already here, and put that brand out there to their following, whether it's on social or use them as an advocate. So, you know, the space is lucrative enough to where a marketing CMO, a marketing director, they understand, hey, these are incremental impressions potentially that's now tied to, right, an advocate that has a very big following here at a university that's, you know, in the top, 50, 100 from a brand recognition perspective. So, you know, I think that's going to, from a sales perspective, I think we're going to have opportunities that present themselves in just the fact that we can brand along with athletes. The other component is, you know, and I think we've talked about it in our own way, but, you know, when you look at donor relations and that target market, you've got people that potentially that work in large organizations and small organizations that maybe haven't been donating over the years. And so our approach can be to the same teams, but the reality is now we have a way of showing an ROI for their input and the dollars they give back. And, you know, again, delivering that through multiple campaigns, whether it's on social media, whether it's through speaking engagements, through events, and whatnot. So.
Yeah, you touched on this a little bit already. Tell me about your Temple story. You were a mid-distance runner, right, on the track team. You walked on.
Yeah, well,
what was it? Tell me about, like, just you're in high school in North Jersey. What was it about Temple that resonated to you? what made you want to walk on here and pursue a track career?
Yeah, I got a funny story when it comes to athletics. So I boxed and played soccer in high school. Those were my primary sports. I didn't run track till my senior year.
Okay.
And, I had a great coach who really forced me to get outside my comfort zone in high school and threw me into the 400 one day, which was miserable the first time. But I picked it up and I said, I got a passion for this. I got the speed, right? I got the endurance from soccer. Let me see if I can make something of it.
What high school were you at?
Hopatcong High School in North Jersey, in Sussex County.
And Jersey's loaded for track.
Jersey is loaded. So going through the whole, the sectionals and going through that process, very competitive. And I'm a competitive person.
Yeah.
So what I quickly saw was like, hey, I can input the time, I can input the effort, I can out hustle, I can outwork. That's always been my grind mentality as a person. And I can make a real big impact in my speed. My time's getting faster. And when I got to Temple, I did a tour, and my cousin went here for a couple courses and ended up transferring to another university in her life. But I had got here on campus, and you and I talked about earlier. This is that hustle and bustle city environment, and that's really what attracted me to it was, there's so many people, there's so much opportunity, there's so much going on. And when I first stepped on campus, I want to be a part of that. There's just an energy about this campus when it's, during that tour and during class and during a season when you've got people out and about on Leah Course Walk, there's a lot going on. I said, that energy, I vibe with that. I want to be a part of it. I got to Temple as a freshman, and, I thought about trying to go and play soccer, and for myself, track was starting to become a passion my senior year. I walked on, and at the time the coach said, yeah, you can walk on, but you got to bump up in distance. And I said, okay, what does that mean, right? There's almost double the distance, virtually the same speed. So, I trained and I put some really, really great times on the track. Each year I did it, and I saw myself get better and better, and we hold a couple records and got a couple medals over the years. And what I learned was, just like I've done in my career is, the hustle was important, and the impact that I made in my times and my training. Temple Athletics was good to me, man. I absolutely loved it. My time here, I met my wife, I mentioned earlier.
How'd you meet? Tell me your story.
So one of my training partners actually had class with her, and I've known him for a long time. And his connection to her was he was trying to ask her out on a date for a long time, and love the guy. And we went to a bar. It was like our senior year, and I met her through him. And quickly we had a quick connection, and just kept conversations going. Dated officially, and then, oh gosh, she's gonna slap me if she hears it. A couple more than a decade later, we've got 2 kids. They turned 6 on Sunday. I've got twins. We got a house in Bucks County, and 2 owls that have been together ever since. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, you were here at Temple when, just from an athletics perspective, Al Golden was really starting to turn things around in football, which was really one of the bigger college football turnarounds in recent memory. Fran Dunphy had started to get the men's basketball team back to the tournament on a consistent basis. So you've seen what it's like here when it's good. Are there certain seasons and certain moments that you've experienced where you say, I want Temple to get back to that? What are your memories that resonate with you and say, I remember when it's good, and I want to help in my way now through this fund, through this collective, get them back to that?
I'll never forget being on ESPN, getting a call from my mom saying, what are you doing with your shirt off on ESPN and owls painted on your chest? I'll never forget. It was my junior year when we played Tennessee, and we beat them. And they were, top 3 ranked in the country. And, we had Deontay and a couple of really star players.
Sergio almost had a big game.
That environment in that stadium was like the epitome of what we deserve to be. We're a gritty school. We're a gritty program. We can compete with the best of the best. We weren't even ranked, I don't think. If anything, we were, top, 25. But reality was, you come into our court, you come into our home, right? The Owls always were fighters. And I think that's what we embodied in track. You could compete with some of the big names and the big programs. And, we step on the track, everybody's equal. You put the time in before, you step on the court. Those were the best season. That was probably the number 1 season I remember most. Just because, obviously I got that call. But for me, it was, an environment of the underdog. And I think that's what I've always really connected with, is that underdog mentality. We were never... If you looked at the rankings going into that game, Temple's going to get blown out. They came to our court. They played us in North Philly. They played us in Leah Course, and we showed them, what we're made of. And I think that's the energy that I look for our collective to help us get back to, right? That environment of that, hey, look, Temple may not be a top 10 school in football programs yet, right? We may not be a top 10 in basketball, but we can be top 25, and we can compete with number 1, and we can win. I think that's really always been the energy that I've kind of connected with the most. And I think our collective, you know, in partnership with those companies and groups I mentioned earlier, I think we can help drive that culture, because NIL is a rapidly evolving space that's only going to allow organizations to really contribute and get to that retention, get to that attraction for the top tier talent.
What does the momentum mean to you? You know, Adam Fisher took a team that looked like was on the brink of having its season ended early, and they damn near get to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
Diane Richardson, was in a position, had them in a position to win the conference tournament. They didn't, but she turned them around in the span of a year, retooled the roster. She's so charismatic. Both coaches are like that. Football's got some work to do. You have some some of the non-revenue sports that are starting to make some progress. Where do you see the momentum right now in terms of like anything that you guys can start to capitalize on that you saw like from coming off of last season?
Yeah, I mean, look, Coach Fish, that run he had, and obviously Diane too, and they both had fantastic, I would say, examples of that energy. I said, that underdog mentality. Mm-hmm. We weren't being told we were going to make it that far. You said, potentially in the end of the season. When it comes to sports in particular, or teams, I think we've got an opportunity, not just with football and basketball, men's and women's basketball. I think each sport, and that's the beauty of the way we're approaching this. At the end of the day, it's a sports marketing agency is going to be our approach. It's really going to be brand specific to the athlete or the team and the demographic that brand wants to approach. So as many people will, and other collectives around the country will lean in sometimes into the revenue generating sports, we're not going to lean in one way or another. We're going to help where we see fit based on the brands that we attract and those that want to associate with the athletes. And it just comes back to that education part, right? And the opportunity itself. So, I think that we've got a blank canvas when it comes to where we can really impact and lean in.
Because you have someone who could be on the track team or a soccer player who's got like a huge social media following.
Yeah. Or women's volleyball, and they've got hundreds of thousands of followers.
Sure, yeah.
And there's a brand that just wants to associate with
and they
that.
couldn't capitalize on that before. There was a student athlete here on the soccer team before who was like a musician or rapping, and he couldn't he had to shut down his YouTube channel because he couldn't monetize that.
I remember going on and hosting official visits for athletes when they were viewing the school and doing their tour, and we always joked about it. It was the syrup days where like they got 2 packets of syrup and the other recruit got 1. Like, it was to that level of scrutiny, and it's totally different now. So I think, it's really an exciting time to be doing what we're doing. We couldn't have started this at a better time. And for those that don't know, we started this in 60 days. I mean, we really kind of from concept to execution right now where we are today, which is we're officially launched. Our press release went out. And we've got another, obviously really happy to join you today. A couple other outlets just helping to share the news. It's only going to get more exciting from here.
You were a history and education major at Temple?
Yeah.
How did you end up? And you've carved out a really successful marketing career for yourself. You're at Comcast. We were talking before we started recording. You guys are expanding into New York now. So you've been successful with your full-time job. How did you get into marketing from where you started?
Yeah, it's funny. I get asked that a lot, actually, John. So I was education for most of my life. I wanted to teach. I wanted to make an impact with others. And, I had some internships early in my life where I got the opportunity to work with youth groups and do that. Where I pivoted was I was student teaching at Carver High School right off campus my last year. And I had an opportunity with a beverage company. Early on in my life here, I started to work. At first, it almost felt like unpaid internship for the amount of hours I put in, but it was a learning experience with Honest Tea, if you're familiar with it. Yeah. An organic tea company right out of Bethesda, Maryland. Yeah. Worked on and off as an intern throughout school, really helped grow that brand because that's how they grew. They grew grassroots marketing, and eventually we sold to Coke. And I got to see that, those efforts, when calculated the right way and you amplify through the right tactics, a brand can explode. And what I learned and I applied was that was fun. And I had a great time doing it. And it just happened at a time where we were selling to Coke and I had an opportunity to stay with them and move, and potentially go to a different area of the country. And Comcast, I actually had seen an executive present in one of my business classes, which I picked up as a minor, right? So you said education history. Yeah. My minor was actually in business. Okay. And I was in a class one day and I remember, seeing a guest speaker talk. And as this transition happened in my career where I'm like, I got my praxis, I got my certification, so I go back and try to get a full-time teaching job. Or do I see what happens here? I had a lot of fun with Honest Tea. Comcast was a big brand here, and I reached out to that executive, just sent my resume, and got an interview. And what it did is it put me into the conversation, and I just took that brief marketing stint that I had with Honest Tea, and started to magnify it through sales, through business development, And I had a lot of fun on the entrepreneurial startups that I worked on, because that's what Honest Tea was. That's what most of the business that I've helped impact at Comcast have been. Grassroots start projects from ground zero. How do we make an impact in a certain sector? And I enjoyed that. And what I learned very quickly was I was teaching along the way. So I got elements of that teaching as a leader, as a manager, as a director now. I've been teaching and guiding others and continue to mentor internally and externally. So teaching is still a core of who I am. And that's why you hear me mention education a few times on the collective's mission, and where I believe we can really make a big impact. But that was really the pivotal change for me, from education to marketing. And now it's been 12 or 13 years at Comcast, and been selling and marketing all along the way. So
thanks, Lou. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun.
All right, so great stuff from Lou. Really appreciate his time and his perspective. And hopefully you all learned a lot from that conversation. And like I said, how they're going to be working to complement what the TUFF Fund and Andy Carl have already been doing. So another important step forward for Temple in the NIL space. Speaking of that, that is one of several things that Jacob Smedley talked to Temple Athletic Director Arthur Johnson about Tuesday night at the Temple Takeover event at the 1912 Club in Plymouth meeting. So Jacob got Arthur for a one-on-one conversation for close to 30 minutes. We have excerpts of that interview for subscribers up on the site now, as I mentioned at the outset of the show. Arthur talked about the Our Elite Fund. He talked about whether or not there's been an update on the U.S. integrity investigation of the men's basketball program. Talked about the recent House versus the NCAA settlement, what it means for Temple. We're going to play a clip for you here where Jacob asked Arthur about where he thinks Temple is now with NIL in terms of progress. And Arthur talks about where he feels Temple is in relation to its peers. And I want to play this clip again. This is a small excerpt from a larger conversation, but we'll play this clip for you here. And then Declan and I are going to be reacting to it on the other side.
Where do you think Temple is right now in NIL?
No, I think we, quite frankly, I think we're in a similar space with a lot of our peers. A lot of our peers have some of the similar challenges with it. So could it have been better? Could we have rolled it out better and been more proactive and more involved? Yes, but it doesn't guarantee you anything. Texas A&M had one of the best NIL programs in the country, but they ended up paying a coach, and they didn't have success on the field. So that doesn't guarantee you success at all. You still got to develop kids. You still got to coach them. They still got to go out on the field and execute. You still got to have a game plan. You still got to do all of that stuff. There are some basketball schools that had great NILs who didn't get out of the first round. So it's on coaches to figure that out. And then the other thing is, it's a lot of uncertainty. It's a lot of numbers that are thrown out at times. I think people have to be very careful. They say your valuation is this. What does that mean? That means what someone's projecting you to get. So when you hear groups say there is $1.2 billion in NIL money out there, but no one can pull 100 contracts together. So how are you aggregating that? So it's all a guess. And I think kids and families have used that to their advantage.
Declan, your thoughts on what Arthur had to say there?
I think I agree with Arthur to an extent, because I do think NIL's in a better place than it was like a year ago today, or even 6 months ago today. But I also think that when you listen to some of that, it doesn't exactly inspire confidence, right? Because you hear him talk about Texas A&M, and that's fair. Like, you can have as many pieces as you want. If you don't have the coaching that brings it together, you're not going to experience success, right? But the other side of that is, if you had better pieces to coach, then your expectations are a little higher, and then you can reach a higher ceiling. I would venture to say if Temple had Texas A&M's NIL budget, they would be in a lot better space with the coaches they have now, because I think
Bingo.
You look at the coaches they have and how successful they've been with what they have on their roster, and then you add to that going to get some of the best in the country because you can afford to. I mean, you're setting up a recipe for success there. But my my other point with, listening to what he was saying, he mentions Temple's peers, right? And I think there are similar programs that have had NIL issues and competing with some of the larger programs, but I'd like to know what peers he's referring to. I think the biggest thing from that sort of clip is, who does Temple compare themselves to?
Mhm.
And when I talked to him in, oh my gosh, October, forever ago, I remember him saying looking in conference is their biggest, sort of peer. But then you think of schools like Charlotte who have these big budgets. You have SMU who's going to a different conference now, and is competing at a whole other level. You look at teams that left the American, and how they've been able to compete in their conferences. I just think I would like to know a little more clearly who they're measuring up against, and who these other schools who are these other schools that are facing challenges, and what are they doing in comparison to Temple. So I think if I was a Temple fan investing money into these programs like the potentially Owl Elite, the TUFF Fund, obviously, that's what I would want to know. And in terms of what direction is this program heading, I think those are some questions that maybe were in the back of the mind, but now hearing that clip, they need to be addressed. No doubt about it.
Yeah, very well said. I think Arthur kind of just got into this meandering territory, and he kind of loses people when you bring up Texas A&M. And look, I like Arthur. I like rooting for good stories and good people. And even look, I mean, people who have listened to this podcast for a long time or know me, they know that I work full time at Temple, have 2 degrees from Temple. I am Temple's managing director of student media in the Claire Smith Center. You and I work together through the student media outlets. But when I'm covering Temple for Owl Scoop, I have to be as fair as I can be. And look, I mean, you could move me to Evanston, Illinois tomorrow to cover Northwestern, and I'm still not the type of guy who like roots against people. I want to see good stories. I want to see people do well. And I like Arthur. I want to see him do well. But with that answer, he was honest at first when he said, look, did it take a while for it to roll out? Could we have rolled it out better? And of course, I'm paraphrasing, yes. But I think we compare favorably, to our peers. And I think you could have left it at that and said, we've still got a lot of work to do. Texas A&M is not a peer. And I don't think anybody's expecting Texas A&M to be a peer. Texas A&M, I mean, I haven't looked at their books, but Texas A&M, the last time I checked, is one of the few profitable athletic departments in the country. They print money. They had the money to match. A perfect example, Mike Elko was offered the job. Had Mike Elko taken Temple's head coaching job, Temple would have been in a much different position with football. There would have been no Manny Diaz fiasco. There would have been no Rod Carey fiasco. Temple offered Mike a decent head coaching salary. Texas A&M was able to match it, keep him there as a defensive line coach. Texas A&M's got money. And yes, he makes a fair point in that they've had to make a coaching change, but you'd still rather be Texas A&M any day of the week and twice on Sunday. And yes, your coaches need to coach your players up really well, but we already know that stuff. Yes, there were teams that didn't get out of the first round of the NCAA tournament, but they got there. That's the nature of the NCAA tournament. There are great teams that get upset. Tony Bennett, when they lost to UMBC and they were out in the first round, you'd still rather be UVA, wouldn't you? They won a national championship. They're an ACC program. I think they have made progress. Andy would tell you that. I think just the collaboration now, and people can listen to the full interview later on. Like I said, Owl Scoop subscribers can see some of Arthur's answers already. Just as we're recording this now, we'll have his full interview available for subscribers. Again, this is one aspect of the conversation, one clip from the conversation. He talked about some other things, talked about, just the progress of the teams and the event last night. But I think he just would have been better off saying they've made progress. Again, the fact that there's a second collective in the for-profit space that can go business to business, as Lou just talked about, that's a great thing. So I think he just started to meander in that direction. I thought, you talked about your peers, but then you didn't talk about which peers what are the aspirant institutions out there that you're looking at? Is it, and I'm making this up, is it a Tulane? Is it one of the newer programs like FAU? Like who are you looking at? Texas A&M is not one of your peers. And then when you say, yeah, they've got a great NIL budget, but there's no but. And you make a great point. What could Diane Richardson, Adam Fisher, and Stan Drayton do if they had a fraction of that. So,
and I feel like a big thing, and you kind of alluded to it when you were talking about Arthur's comments, but your biggest role, you'd think, in sort of the modern role of an athletic director is to get people excited about your program, right? To build these sort of relationships with your fans where they're willing to spend their, their time and their money and their energy on your program. And I feel like you mentioned it. Everybody kind of knew the Temple started late and Temple fell behind quick in the NIL space. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's the first time I've ever heard Arthur say it directly, right? And you'd think that sort of level of honesty and like, hey, we're trying to get to this space would be a point of emphasis for this program that had so much momentum in March in raising money, in getting people excited about the team. And then they, for men's basketball, they went and brought in a lot of people. For women's basketball, they did the same. I feel like, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but as an athletic director, why not capitalize on that instead of like reminding people that there are other schools that are way ahead? You know what I mean? Like, why not look at the side of it where it's like, hey, we are working on it, but look what we've been able to accomplish in such a short time because of your support, because of what fans have been able to do for our organizations. And now we've opened up Owl Elite, and that branches off into that new space. I feel like his answer almost delved so negatively, where it's like, we mentioned it, like comparing to these peers that we have no idea who they are. We don't know if they exist. We don't know what those metrics are. I just feel like Temple at times has this sort of image problem with their NIL space. And it's things like this that kind of bring it down at times. And it's stuff that I know Andy Carl, you mentioned him earlier, is trying to go against, and getting the fans excited, doing things like that meet and greet yesterday is big to get people like Arthur in front of the fans' faces. But I just, at times it feels like, one step forward, one or two steps back because of little things like that, and I don't know if that's just me, as I took one PR class and now I think I'm all that, but.
And I'm sure he talked last night. He had Lou Parisi talk, he had Andy Carl talk. I'm sure he highlighted the progress that's been made by the TUFF Fund. He talked about, introduced Lou, introduced the Owl Elite Fund. And I would imagine, I'm sure he talked at length about the progress that Diane has made and that Adam has made. And Smeds got into that with him as well. But in that specific space, in that answer, I wish he just kind of would have gotten out. Like you said, I mean, good on him to acknowledge that they got a late start. I think we compare favorably to our peers. Then tell us who those peers are. And then he's almost kind of just saying, yeah, Texas A&M, but there's no but to that. Yes, Jimbo Fisher's gone, but you're able to bring in Mike Elko from Duke, who's a very, very good head coach and would have been a great head coach at Temple. I'm sure he would have been gone by now, but again, would you rather have Mike Elko, 2 or 3 good years of Mike Elko, or the Manny Diaz fiasco and the last 2 years, the Rod Carey era? Like I keep saying it, I just think of it as like meandering. Once you get into that territory, I don't know. Alas, we move on. A few other things to get to here. Talked about a Temple men's basketball scheduling update. We broke this news earlier today on Twitter. Florida State is going to be the program that is slated to replace Boston College and Providence in the Basketball Hall of Fame showcase. So now it's going to be Temple, Florida State, and UMass playing each other in a round robin format that starts with Temple against FSU on November 22nd. And we'll have more stuff on the schedule as it breaks. A couple other things to draw your attention to. Again, if you're a Temple basketball fan and you follow recruiting, I would advise you all to check out Ryan Mack's story about Devin Booker and Jason Yavis' story about Cam Wallace. They're two of Temple's recruiting priorities in the 2025 class. Cam Wallace at the Westtown School and Devin Booker is at Cristo Rey. Again, you have to be an owlscoop.com subscriber to read those stories, but a lot of good stuff there about where their recruitment stands, their thoughts on Temple, what they're working on this summer. Also talked about some Temple football staff additions. So Stan introduced 3 of his newest staff members. Tuesday, they put out a release. We had first reported the news, last week, a couple weeks ago, a little more than 2 weeks ago, almost 3 weeks ago, that Stan Drayton was going to add Ernest Wilson to be his chief of staff. Sam Scott, in addition to that, Sam Scott's going to be the assistant director of player personnel, and Toriana Brown is going to be the programs director of on-campus recruiting. So Ernest Wilson's going to be taking over for Marcus Berry. He's the former chief of staff, and now Marcus Berry is going to be the director of player personnel. So just a few staff updates there you can read about on the site and Zach Silverstein's story. All right, so we have 3 mailbag questions to get to this week, all from Twitter. First 2 that we're going to answer here, I promised to get to from previous weeks. This first one here is from our friend Ariel Weinberg, who's over in Israel, longtime House Scoop subscriber and Scoop listener. He had DM'd this one over to us. With Temple dipping into the legacy pool and some working out, like Shiz Alston, the son of LeVan Alston, and some not, Jake Forrester, the class of 2025 includes Jaron McKee and Sharif Jackson. So, of course, Jaron McKee is at St. Joe's Prep, Aaron McKee's son, and Sharif Jackson, Mark's son, at Roman Catholic. Assuming that neither of them reclassify, what are the chances of them landing on North Broad Street with Dylan Battie? All right, to the best of my knowledge, Jaron McKee is a good player, solid guard. Again, we haven't interviewed Jaron McKee about this. I don't put the chances of Jaron landing at Temple super high right now. Maybe he doesn't want to go to Temple where his father used to be the head coach, but I think that Jaron might be the type of guy that leaves the area to go to a high academic school. We'll see. Again, like so many of these guys, their recruitments can go up, down, left, or right, depending on a shot they hit during the live periods in the summer. They're both good ball players. I think Sharif Jackson, Temple's probably monitoring him, kind of a 6'6", 6'7", kind of tweener forward. We'll see what happens there. I don't have the greatest handle on Sharif's recruitment just yet. So obviously the staff is aware of both guys, but each one of them has his own unique recruitments. I think you're talking about different situations with Shiz. I mean, I think Shiz was kind of a no-brainer, worked out. Jake Forrester, Dwight Forrester's son, came in as a transfer from Indiana. Didn't work out for him. Ended up finishing his career at St. Louis. Now he's playing overseas. Wish him well there. Dylan Battie, Derek Battie's son. I know they're very excited about him. But yeah, they're aware of both guys, but kind of like just to be determined. I haven't heard that either guy is leaning to a specific school or a specific area. We will just have to see there. Second one from Twitter comes from the username Tim Doug. Can you discuss, and this was one we didn't get to last week, promised him that we would get to this one. Can you discuss NIL from this theory? Is Temple better to become expert portal hunters? It looks like if they strike gold with a freshman and they overperform, do we just expect them to hit the portal for a better payday? In the portal, we can grab talent similar to a junior college bounce back. Good question. We talk about this a lot. I'm sure fans think about this a lot. It is good for Temple to become expert portal hunters in the sense that so many coaches now say, get old and stay old. So that's a good thing for guys in the portal, not the greatest thing in the world for, fringe D1 guys who might have landed at like a Hofstra, a St. Peter's, a low D1 school. You bring up a good point there. Like you're saying, if you strike gold with a freshman and they overperform, do you lose them? Well, I wouldn't call Zion Stanford. He wasn't a first team all conference player, but I'm sure Zion, had he hit the portal, probably would have had options. Kyle said last week or the week before that he's had a good summer. I expect him to be a pretty good ball player for him. Where I would lean on that is, I think you would want them to be expert portal hunters. Although if you want to be an expert portal hunter, you have to have the NIL resources to support that. Because again, to be honest with you, there are bigs in the portal who were averaging a few points and a few rebounds per game who were getting 6-figure NIL packages. And I know that the Arthur is in that clip that we played is sort of intimating that sometimes he didn't say it quite like this, that numbers can be exaggerated, but not really, not all the time. So I think you'd want to be good to proficient to solid portal hunters, but you're not going to shy away from recruiting good high school players. I mean, Temple is still going to go after the Cam Wallaces, the Devin Bookers, the KJ Cochrans, the Keyshawn Tillerys of the world, and they're really good ball players. And you get them in and you retain them and you see what resonates with the kids. So I know it sounds like a cop-out answer. I think you have to be a good mixture of both. I don't think that you just completely give up on recruiting really good high school players. But Doug, I can totally understand the question here, but I think you still have to proceed with a good mixture of both.
And it probably depends on the sport too, because if we're talking football, right, and the state of the program, and this being Stan Drayton's third year, kind of I'm not going to say make or break. I'm not going to go that far, but it's definitely a let's see what you can do type year. You're going to want those older, more experienced guys who are going to have less of a transition because you need to go right away. Whereas, with somebody like Adam Fisher, who brought in some good talent, but also brought in two freshmen that could be studs down the line, depending on how they transition. They don't have that sort of pressure to play right away because they have guys in front of them. So I do think it depends on where your team is, but I tend to agree with you that, teams these days, especially teams at Temple's level with Temple's sort of NIL situation, are going to lean portal because the reality is they're going to lose star players every year because that's just the nature of where they're competing. So the easiest thing to do when you lose a star player is to bring in a guy that maybe could get up to that level sooner rather than later.
Yeah, you make a great point. In football, it's going to be different. And we've already seen a significant decrease in the size of their class when it comes to the amount of high school players they're signing. That could get even smaller, next year because you need immediate help, at defensive line, the secondary areas where they tried to add depth. Whereas in basketball, like I said, I think it's got to be a mixture of both. I think Diane's had a mixture of both. Again, just a reminder, we got one-on-one interviews with Diane Richardson, Adam Fisher, and Stan Drayton last night through Jacob Smedley and Jake Gable. So you'll want to stay tuned for them. But great question there. Final mailbag question before we get into our food conversation. Temple TUFF off the hook 3, one of our longtime listeners, piggybacking off of the question last week. If the staff of Scoop played some backyard football, what would everyone's EA Sports grades be? You can include former staff too. I want to give Dante Colonelli a 70, but I need to see the 40-yard dash. That's
Dante's
awesome.
a high IQ player. It's hard not to.
Yeah, he's working for the
33rd.
Yeah, he's working for the 33rd team. He's working with former NFL coaches and execs and editing their stories. And Dante played a little bit of high school football. He's good. Did he play at Central Bucks? Or no, played at Council. I can't remember, Dante. I love you. I should know this. I can't remember if he played at one of the Bucks schools or one of the Council. I think he played at Council Rock North or South. Anyway, very smart football guy. And again, you should check out his work working for the 33rd team. He's an editor there, does a great job. Everyone's EA Sports grades. This would be a little bit more fun. Not that I don't love you. If we had Kyle and Mir on, I mean, Kyle would just be unforgiving. Johnny would get very defensive.
Yeah,
very defensive.
I think we have the fair coalition here.
Yeah, exactly. We're very, very balanced. What would you give? Let's start with Johnny. What would you give? What EA score would you give Johnny?
See, Johnny's tough because Johnny is an endurance guy. Got a lot of, obviously national champion, cross country runner. Don't look it up. He's a speedy guy, a lot of endurance. We've seen him play football, but you got to consider the talent he was going up against. I'll leave it there. I won't name any names.
Oof.
I do think Johnny is probably, as of right now, right here today, the most athletic of the Owl Scoop people that I'm thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
So I would put him probably, if Dante is a 70, that's what I'm going off against, which I don't agree with, but I can see. I do think Johnny is an 82. I think Johnny brings a lot to the table.
Mm.
But then going off of that, Mir is also a very athletic human as well.
Mm-hmm.
He always says if he had focused a little more on being in high school, playing high school football, he thinks he could make the league. That's up for, debate. He is a very fit person. No, I think he could. I believe in him.
So staff nutritionist.
He is staff nutritionist. He is the hardest workout worker I've ever seen. He's very good at pushing people and pushing himself. I think you could get him to a place where he's right up there with Johnny. So I'm going to put him right behind. I'm going to say he's a 78. And I do think, I think that's well earned. Kyle, I don't know what to think of Kyle. I see Kyle more as as our head coach, actually, or our offensive coordinator. I don't see Kyle playing. You're obviously the quarterback. You got the old man cannon. I'm gonna give you. You got a good arm. You got good accuracy. The mobility. little bit of a question mark sometimes. You are quick when you want to be, though. We see the billionaire strut you've got. So I'm gonna give you. I think the arm talent really raises you. I think you're a 75.
I'll take
See,
that.
this is why I think Dante 70 is too low, though.
Yeah, Dante's 70 is too low, I think.
I'm gonna put Dante at a 79.
Yeah.
I still think Johnny's an 82. And Kyle, I don't see Kyle playing. I see Kyle as our head coach. You know, kind of a John Harbaugh, which Javon's gonna hate to hear, but a John Harbaugh where he's like the spiritual leader. You know, he commands the locker room. You know, I don't think John Harbaugh calls the plays. I don't think Kyle does either, but I think he's our guy. You know, we worship him. You know, we follow in his footsteps.
Can you talk at all about how slightly edgy Johnny got when we were outside a few weeks ago, a month ago, outside by Ritter Hall, throwing the football around? I felt like I was all-time quarterback playing with my two nephews. And Johnny,
just not a bad description.
Yeah, Johnny, it just got overly aggressive in terms of just biting commentary with Jason.
So you were surprised by how competitive Johnny gets, but let me lay the full picture out for you here, okay, for my very good friend, because you know I said cross country national champion. That could be slightly exaggerated, but not far fetched, because he was running in some pretty like high level national races in high school. Like this kid, you know, you gotta want it at that level, especially with how young he was at the time. He is probably one of the most competitive humans I've ever met. Like he is unbelievable. And anytime he gets even like a small like semblance of competition, and it could be like something as simple as, you know, our banter if we're having an argument and we both just get really heated because he brings out the worst in me in competition. He wants to win everything, which I respect the heck out of. He is a very like competitive person. And to be honest, I'm shocked because when we went out there and we played football for a little bit, it was our final TTN meeting, and we kind of were messing around after. And
TTN, of course, is the award-winning student newspaper, Temple News.
Sorry, the Temple News. And he was going one-on-one with Jason Yeves, our very own, and just cooking him. And he was letting him know every single time too. He was, you know, he was getting a little physical. He was, you know, chatting the whole way. In fact, he didn't stop chatting even when Jason left. He was still yapping his gums. So he's a very competitive person. And I do think there's a reason that he's the highest rated in my ratings because of that, you know? You can't teach that.
How about the time that Jay got behind Johnny? And I said to Jay, like, I was just trying to have fun. I was like, you want to draw up a couple plays here? And Jay just went out. He beat Johnny on a route. He broke one way. I thought he was going to break the other way. And Johnny starts just yapping at him. What was that about? What was that about? And Jay said, well, I thought John was going to put the ball in one area and I broke the other way. What did Johnny say?
It was something like, oh, now you're blaming him, or you got to be better.
Don't blame John. I have a good connection with him. That's your fault.
That's what it was. He was called to question relationships, and that's how you know the young man wanted to win.
Yeah.
And you know what? You just simply can't teach that fire. Can't.
Little bit of Bradley Cooper from Wedding Crashers in him, where I mean, he wasn't
100%.
like laying people out, but just
he would have. I think if it was a bigger space and fewer eyes, I think he would have.
That made me laugh. He was into it.
He was. Really, but he does that. That's the thing. He does that with everything. Like, that's why I love it. Like it happens with, I'm serious. Like I remember last year, the day that the water went out in Philly, where it was like the leak and they shut down everything. He and I went to a University of Pennsylvania baseball game because he was in Mark Zumoff's play-by-play class and he needed a color commentator. So I went with him, but I had wanted to go anyway. Regardless, we walked all the way from whatever the stadium's called. I can't remember. I'm sorry. From City Hall to that stadium, which is easily an hour and a half walk. And on the way back, we argued about, I don't even remember. It was something like a topping on a sandwich or like something stupid for an hour. And we got heated to the point where I had to stop because I was like, Johnny, if we go any further, I'm not going to be able to speak to you for the rest of the day. So like, it's just little stuff, you know, he wants to win everything and you got to love it. Like, it's a beautiful thing.
And now this week he's sporting a Brewers uniform, right?
Yeah, for today only. And then
Yeah.
he'll have, I think, like a week off while they go to London, maybe a little more.
I wish Johnny could go to London and he could come back with a little bit of like Roy Kent to him. Couldn't you see
That'd
if
be
Johnny was
sweet.
in Ted Lasso, he'd be Roy Kent?
It would be the opposite though, because it would be like a high pitched Roy Kent. It would just be weird. And you just like growl at people. Oh, I actually could see it.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Declan, let's take this home here. Where do we stand with the Scoop Summer Madness food bracket? Again, I would like to remind people, so we kind of teased this. Again, it's not John and Kate's.
No. See,
It's
you
General
put it in the
Express
group
and
chat.
Boston Donut.
See, but you put it in the group chat, and I wanted to save it for the podcast, hoping that I'd have some people to back me up, and it wasn't just one-on-one. I feel like the way you described it, right? This mysterious place, the former John and Kate's, was that it was one entity. And now how you're describing it is two vendors with different businesses in a shared location.
But I think that
that should disqualify it.
I think no.
Yes, I think so.
You could walk in and buy a donut and Chinese food, and I think it was one purchase. I think it was a one-time purchase.
But is it like those things where you go, there's a Baskin Robbins, there's an
No.
That's what it sounds like.
No, it was
because that's one counter too.
No, I think it was more so you walk in. I think the uniqueness of it was what made it great. I mean, we would laugh at ourselves for going in and saying, "Oh, we're going to get Chinese food and a donut and eat it all at the same time. What could go wrong?" But it was great. It was just a staple. I think so much of what makes this fun is people are talking about like it's part of Temple's identity, right? And then people are harkening back to different eras, and people are like, "What's this? What's the white truck? What's this? This place that was over this restaurant?" And Joe Becca, our friend Joe Becca, saying the steak night at J&H, some of which still hasn't digested, all that fun stuff. No, I think, am I biased? Yes. Have I been like just going to bat for this place? Yes. But it was a place where you could go make a one-time purchase where you could buy everything at once. So I understand where you're coming from, but I don't think that should disqualify it.
I think we should put it to a vote, and here's why. The number 2 seed, the formerly known as Johnny Cate. What? Hear me out. The formerly known as Johnny Cates took on the number 7 seed Crown Fried Chicken in the Macon region. On Instagram, Crown Fried Chicken won 8-3. On Twitter, however, Johnny Cates won 11-6. For those of you who are, better at math, that's a 14-14 tie. And now with this recent discovery, I think we need a revote because personally, I think we need to leave it up to the people to decide
I'm for
whether or not this is one place or two. Because
let's do a revote.
Quite frankly, I think it calls into question the rest. Because then all of a sudden, what Subway and Maxie's share a door? Are they?
No, it wasn't like that.
Like that's where.
No, it's not like that at all. This was one place.
I think there's a fine line.
It was one place where people know they could go and get Chinese food and donuts at the same time.
But was it two businesses?
I don't believe so. Well,
that's what I'm not sure.
I see it as its own entity.
We got to see where the people see. I think we need to put it out there. When you hear this episode,
people used to informally call it Chinese donuts.
Okay. Well, there are a lot of things that people call a lot of things. I can't. I gotta hear it out because.
What do you have against this place, Declan?
Nothing. I voted for it.
That's good.
Like there's a 2 seed for a reason. There were only 2 opinions that got in.
No, it's very fair. I agree. I think we should put it to a revote.
Okay, we'll put it to a revote then because, like I said, it's a tie ball game right now. So that was actually our only tie. There were a couple close matchups this week, but for those of you that, for whatever reason, have not been listening, we are ranking the top Temple food places on campus where you can go get a bite to eat. It's on Twitter. It's on Instagram. You can see the full bracket. We did half of the first round this week. We're going to have the other half of the first round coming later this week. You'll be able to vote on our Instagram stories probably 24 hours before the deadline, which is this Sunday, June 9th at 5 p.m. So you'll be able to vote 24 hours ahead of that on the Instagram stories and probably like 48 or so hours on Twitter. So go check that out. Go stay tuned. I'll release it on my profile. We'll retweet it via Owl Scoop, and then it'll be on the Owl Scoop Instagram, which is at @OwlScoop_com. Go check it out. Got a lot of good content over there. We'll keep it in the Macon region because the number 3 seed Mexican Grill Stand took on the number 6 seed Owl Breakfast and Lunch. Close battle. I agree with the result ultimately. 18-11, Mexican Grill Stand moves on. They will face either the winner of John and Kate's or Crown Fried Chicken. Sorry, not John and Kate's, whatever the new name for it is, or the actual name for it is.
General Express and Boston Donut.
I'm not going to remember that. I appreciate you, though. And then in our other 2 matchups, we had Bagel Hut, the 4 seed, and Temple Star, the 5 seed. 21-12, Bagel Hut moves on. They will face Masters, who took down Champs, the 8 seed, 17-11. So our matchups in the Macon region are the number 1 seed Masters versus the number 4 seed Bagel Hut, and the number 3 seed Mexican Grill Stand versus either Boston Donut and what was the other one?
General Express.
General Express or Crown Fried Chicken, depending on the vote off. So quite the battle in those regions, you know?
I thought that Bagel Hut Temple Star matchup was going to be a tough one. I have not eaten a Temple Star. I just always heard it was like just good enough Chinese food late night. You didn't care about how it tasted. Bagel Hut, I love. I thought that was a very, very tough first round matchup. I would not have been surprised to see Bagel Hut lose there because people have such affinity and such a fondness for Temple Star because it was like this their late night going out drinking food.
It is, but I think it's kind of been surpassed. I mean, when you've got a powerhouse like Orient Express in the same field, it's kind of tough. Honestly, though, Temple Star did win the Instagram vote, got killed in the Twitter vote, 15-5. So, you know, say what you will about the audience voting over there.
Wait, so Temple Star
the
won the Instagram but got killed on Twitter.
Correct. 7-6 and then lost 15-5 on Twitter.
That kind of makes sense though, right? You think like maybe a younger generation connects more with Temple Star and late night, but an older generation was like, oh, I have fonder memories of Bagel Hut, which has been around.
I would have thought the other way around, to be honest.
No, that's a good point. Yeah.
Well, I've said it on previous episodes. Bagel Hut has been lacking recently. You know, they went down for the renovations. That was almost 3 years without it existing on campus. So that's a lifetime for some.
Was it that long?
I think so, wasn't it? It was either 2 or 3.
We got to fact check that. Get that to the owlscoop.com fact checking department.
Yeah. Riggs, where's Riggs? He can figure it out for me. And then we'll move on to our other region, the Cleco region. The number 1 seed Orient Express taking down the number 8 seed White Truck handedly, 22-7, 11-3 on Instagram, 11-4 on Twitter. Pretty clean sweep and a well-deserving for our overall number 1 seed. The number 4 team Burger Tank taking on the number 5 Raising Cane's. I'm going to be honest, this is shocking. Burger Tank destroyed the Instagram demographic 9-3. Close battle on Twitter, took that home as well. A decisive victory, 18-11. Burger Tank moves on to face Orient Express in the next round.
How are you doing with this? Is this tough for you?
I just think there are a lot of people that, and I'm shocked because it was the Instagram vote. I am surprised. I just think Burger Tank has fallen off big time, but I understand Raising Cane's variety, you know, lackluster.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, me personally, I would have gone the other way. Mm-hmm. That's all I'm going to say. But that's why we vote, you know, and that's the beautiful thing about this.
We got to get more people to the polls. Our votes for the Temple all-time draft, we were getting like 200, 300, 400 votes, I think, from what I can remember on different teams. Kyle was also a nutbag and was just out there like talking.
Yeah, Kyle has not retweeted
like
one of my polls. So
he's being spiteful.
Nobody has actually. Thank you very much. It's just been the Owl Scoop account, and then you retweeted the Owl Scoop account. So a little frustrating.
I think it's just me and you who are most dedicated to this. We're the only
it 100% is. Clearly, we're the only people that showed up.
The bracket.
We're the only people that voted, and the other people that showed up for this episode.
Yeah, maybe we're starting to see the writing on the wall.
You know, it was just an idea. You know, it was, and that's a beautiful thing. But it's all right.
Maybe next week, Kyle and Johnny Raimier are gonna have an intervention. They're gonna be like, "Listen,
I wish they would.
We don't love you guys anymore." Raimier would be the best interventionist, if that's a word.
He would, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, he would break bad news to us with a smooth, deep voice.
Look, I wish they would. Kyle kept saying like, "Oh, I'm gonna let you do this is your thing. I'm gonna let you do your thing." I didn't realize I would get no support. You know, I think there's a fine line between, letting somebody do their thing while supporting them and then just feeding them to the wolves.
Yeah, yeah,
I think that's the
absolutely.
issue here.
Absolutely.
Anyway, we've got two more matchups to talk about: the number 3 seed Footlong Truck and the number 6 seed. And I messed it up last week. Noshery.
The Noshery. Yep.
The Noshery. Okay, this was our closest battle by far. Footlong Truck had a decisive 7-3 win on Instagram. Noshery came right back a close 9-7 win on Twitter. Unfortunately for a different generation than mine, the Noshery fell just short, and the Footlong Truck moves on. Good battle though, 14-12. And then our biggest gap by far, the number 2 seed Richies, rightfully destroying the number 7 seed Fames, 23-5. Good win for Richies. Fames goes home.
All right, Declan, again, read off our Twitter handle and Instagram handle. Where can people vote?
Absolutely. So like I mentioned, 24 hours before the deadline, which is Sunday, June 9th at 5 p.m., you can vote on our Instagram stories at owlscoop_com. And then on Twitter, you can go follow us on Twitter at owlscoop_com as well. You'll be able to find the links. If you're a subscriber, which if you're not, what are you doing? Okay.
Yeah.
You'll be able to find them on our message board threads that I have as well. I believe I called it Summertime Madness Food Bracket Voting. So all the links will be in there for you. It's all going to be on a thread. Very convenient. So go vote, go campaign for your places.
Yeah, before we close things out here, Declan, let's preview these matchups for people.
I'd love to, because I think this is going to be the most controversial voting yet. I think, there were no real upsets in the bracket we just talked about. I don't think that'll be the case in this one, because in the Cheney region, we've got the number 1 seed Maxie's going up against the number 8 seed winner of the play-in Hanks. I think that'll be an interesting matchup. Number 4 seed Azteca Mexican Grill, number 5 seed Owl's Nest. Then this one's going to be good. We've got the number 3 seed Honey Truck going up against the stalwart, the juggernaut, number 6 seed J&H Dining Hall. And then we've got the number 2 seed Pub Web versus the number 7 seed Philly Style. Going to be a battle. Okay. No question about it. And then you look to the Dupree region, and I think we're talking upset right away, because we've got the number 2 seed Thai's Vietnamese going up against the number 7 seed Taco Bell. Oh, baby. Strap in for that one. We've got the number 3 seed Richie's Cafe against the number 6 seed Chick-fil-A. Going to be a battle. We've got the number 4 seed Crepe Truck versus the number 5 seed Bagel Shop, which will be really interesting. And then, as I mentioned, the number 1 seed Eddie's taking on the number 8 seed, the Good Food Bus. So go vote, like I mentioned, before June 9th at 5 p.m.
A Good Food Bus is an older truck, right?
It's an older truck. Like I said, 8 seed, barely missed the play-in, but a lot of passionate people on the message boards about the Good Food Bus. So, maybe there's some more out there. Enough to pull up the upset? Quite frankly, I don't think so. But prove me wrong. Feel free.
Good stuff, Declan. Well, big thank you to everyone for tuning in for another episode. We'll have more for you next week, more basketball content, any recruiting updates, of course, the next round of the Scoop Summertime Madness food bracket. Working on a couple of different guests. I don't want to spoil that just yet, but I think next week's episode will be a fun one. So tune in next week. Again, if you have not yet subscribed to owlscoop.com,
what are you doing?
Exactly. So again, if you have not yet subscribed to owlscoop.com,
what are you doing?
A lot of good content that you're missing out on the site. Again, you can read Jason Nieves' story on Cam Wallace. You can read Ryan Mack's story on Devin Booker, 2 of Temple's priorities in the 2025 class. You can read more about Jacob Smedley's one-on-one interview with Arthur Johnson. Some of the other excerpts of that interview. We'll have the full audio posted soon within the next few days. So a lot of good stuff coming up the pike. We'll have more interviews in the coming weeks in the Getting to Know the Owls series, talking to new players, returnees on the roster. If you didn't have a chance to go back and listen to the full Steve Settle interview, that I conducted with him almost 2 weeks ago. Good stuff there. So a lot of fun stuff to take advantage of if you are an owlscoop.com subscriber. Again, thanks for listening to another episode of Scoop. We'll talk to you next week.